The following episode of the Comics and Crypto podcast is for informational purposes only, and anything expressed by the hosts or their guests is solely their opinion. This podcast does not constitute financial advice, and anyone wishing to invest should seek their own independent financial or professional help. Have fun and enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Sean O'Hare, and I know comics.
Hi, I'm Spencer Vogel, and I know crypto.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee Loader, and I don't know shit. This is the Comics and Crypto podcast.
Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, collectors world in a digital age. Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, it's where the next billionaires will be rich. Comics and crypto.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Comics Crypto podcast. We are here with Mikey today. Thanks so much for joining us. We are really excited for you to be here. Why don't you let everyone know who you are and what 2Cents is all about?
Sure. Thanks, guys. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm Mikey Piro. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 2Cents Audio. That is the wonderful podcasting platform that has social audio in it, that we're trying to really build communities in the audio world around podcasts and any sort of asynchronous audio. Doing it about a year now, and just really excited to be working with amazing creators like yourselves and having this really insightful journey of like the passion that you bring to the table, and then trying to make a set of tools and a platform and a community space for the folks like you to really grow with your audiences.
Oh, thank you, Mikey. Appreciate that. So how did you come up with the idea for 2Cents?
It was a serendipitous story. There's a couple of things that I'll touch base with here. So my prior life before 2Cents, I worked at Meta. It was called Facebook then. And when I was working there, a longtime friend of mine who is a serial entrepreneur, his name is Dean, he came to me during the pandemic. He's like, "Can you believe all of this Clubhouse stuff? It's crazy." He's like, I don't get it. He's like, "I had this idea called 2Cents where you'd have to only talk for 30 seconds about any topic." And I was like, "Dude, I work at Facebook. That is a horrible idea." And so he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, when you give anybody a microphone like that, it's ripe and rampant for just abuse. I was like, and even when you give it kind of the community feel, there's some things to work through. I was like, but there's a kernel of an idea. And our first kind of like mantra was like, everyone has an opinion and we should be able to like run with that. And that was our first kind of salvo. So we kept chewing on the idea. And at that point, personally in my life, I had been experiencing like a really painful divorce. And I was a first-time single dad for the first time in my life. And my kids are pretty old. And so I was used to, democratically splitting things apart in the house. And then all of a sudden it's just me as the parent, and I got to cook and I got to clean and I got to shuttle and I got to do all the stuff. So my time for like live anything like a Clubhouse or a Twitter space went from, a little bit more down to like next to nothing. And so the ability to like play something on demand became really attractive. I'd be tired from staring at a screen all day from work. And I really dug into podcasting as the way to kind of keep my hands moving of like folding laundry or cooking, and then keeping my mind active to engage on interesting topics. And so when Dean came to me with that idea, and I was like, well, I feel like there's a way to do this with podcasts where we can kind of create the thing that podcasters always wanted, which is effectively like a Reddit, but for audio. Because for me, like if I have to put my thumbs on it, and this is kind of how I feel about just human voice in general, there's something about hearing your voice as opposed to reading it, and how magnificent it is to hear your excitement and to hear your enthusiasm that just completely changes it. Where like when you just type, "I'm Kevin Lee Loader," or, "Welcome to Comics and Crypto," it just hits different. And so the medium of audio and the medium that podcast put forward, like there was that gap. And so we're like, we think we can do something cool here where we can let people communicate back with the podcasters on their own schedule. Because all of those apps that came out afterwards were like, live, let's do live. And it's like, I don't have time for live. I put live is for my kids and for hockey, and that's it. It's like there's no exceptions.
I feel the same
But
way with all the, there's a million Twitter spaces in the VEVE community. And I feel like I rarely have the time to jump on and participate as much as I'd want to. Yeah.
And like, let's do the full shill plug on Hold or Sell. I love it. Like, it is a staple of my weekend. And when the alert comes through that you guys have dropped one, it's just it's beautiful. It's something that brings me joy in this piece of my life that's about collecting and this cool blockchain that is being developed and is really early. And then these comics that I grew up with all of these characters that are all super interesting and being recast and reshaped. Like, it's fantastic. And it's succinct and well edited, and it has an amazing theme song, which is all the things that I want that you can't get in a live combo. And so, like, that's where 2Cents started, was like, yeah, let's try, and like, these communities are so fervent. Like, Facebook, I think, gets a bad rap. I love it as a company for a lot of reasons, and I left it for a lot of reasons. But the groups that exist, where there's like a community of people who care about each other, who are trying to do all the same things, those are great. And also, like, I don't want to text and drive, and I don't want to use my thumbs on things. I just want to talk. So that's kind of where we started with 2Cents.
To add to that, Mikey, it's so funny. I mean, when I first started the podcast, actually, even before that, I was engaging on Facebook group pages, like VEVE specifically group pages, and people would contact me and say, "I love the things that you're saying. Can you give me your thoughts on certain comics that are dropping?" And I would send audio messages because I don't want to. So if like,
Sean's the king of audio messages.
Yes.
As Kevin and Spencer both know.
We were preordained to meet, my friend. It was really like, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, we're there.
Yeah. So having an opportunity to talk and engage with people is it's much more intimate and much more meaningful. And it's been a great collaboration. Like, being able to work on this with you, man. It's been so much fun, and meeting so many people around the world.
The around the world part for sure. And look, you guys have just blown me away in terms of so many things. We like, well, maybe, and you're like, poof, it happens. And like, the sponsorships that you've pulled together, like, that community is wild. Elite Comics, that is so much fun to watch. And like, I don't think it exists in a different moment in time without like some of these live things happening, but also for you guys to really think deeply about it and produce all this quality around understanding crypto and understanding comic books, and all in the macro sense, this new type of collecting. Like, that's, I think, the most fascinating part about your podcast, is like, this hasn't really existed before. There is not a way for a physical thing to have been made in the past to then be reinstantiated in a very limited way now. And then you get to like collect them both and talk about their relative values. Like, it's so interesting. Like, I'm going to get into my collecting because I don't know that it'll be the day, but like, it's really fascinating when you hear collectors. Like, when you interviewed David Yu, and he was talking about like how hardcore of a collector he is. And I could see in your signed Marvel poster behind you, the Star Wars behind you, I think that's a CGC graded X-Men comic behind you. Like, all of those things show, like, because collecting is not just about the stuff. It's really about like the people you meet along the way and the stories that happen in the pursuit of the stuff. And like, that is really the part of documenting our own like society and like these interesting parts. And that's where like I got into G.I. Joe collecting like hardcore when I came back from my second tour in Iraq. And for me, it was a way to like cope a bit with how I was kind of like moving through the world at that time. But it was all of these people who just had this love of this franchise and like documented meticulously the history of it. That's where like, I'm going to start with like my most proud comic right now, like collecting wise. I'm going to pull it up on screen.
Yes,
I'm going to
let's
see
it.
I'm going to see if you guys know. It is not a CGC graded, but it is pretty much this is my most prized possession as a collector. And so this is,
oh no, the green screen.
Oh no, the green screen. Hold on.
No.
Maybe
All right,
there it is.
There we go.
Can you see what this is?
Joe.
There we go.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Okay, so you guys clearly have no idea what this is.
Nope.
Nope.
So
I know nothing about G.I. Joe.
If my brother-in-law was here, he'd name it immediately. He's a massive G.I. Joe fan.
Yeah, he loves G.I. Joe.
So here's the funny and awesome part about G.I. Joe is G.I. Joe has been around for, I think it's coming up on its 40th anniversary. And it started with the 12-inch action figures. And then there was like a problem with plastic and oil. And so they shrunk them down to the 3 3/4-inch ones. And it's gone through this interesting where when people are very patriotic, you have G.I. Joe. And when people are less patriotic, you get like Adventure Team, which is about like chasing tigers or like Egyptian pharaohs. But the franchise has moved forward in a way that pits like good against evil and has adventure always in it. And so as a former soldier, as a veteran, I had G.I. Joes, and I always joke with my mom, like the reason why I joined the army is you wouldn't buy me a BB gun as a kid. And so I had those action figures and I loved them. Like I made these dioramas in the mud and I collected the comics, and then they all got kind of put aside. And then when I came back from combat, my friend's dad was hardcore into collecting the 12-inch guys, and they came in and he would show me his stuff. I was like, this is awesome. We got to do this. So it turned into a guy's trip where my dad and his dad and all of us would go someplace, and he didn't fly. So we drove there, and we drove all over the place. And so we drove to the G.I. Joe Collectors Club conventions, and they were all over the country. And it was like once a year. And when I went to the first one, there would be like boxes of comics, and people would just be like, yeah, I got extras of these. And so I got to learn in depth, like what were the best G.I. Joe comics to collect. So there's another one here that I'll show. And this is like a famous cover, and that's G.I. Joe number 21, and it's called The Silent Issue. And all of these are made by Larry Hama. So Larry Hama, the G.I. Joe collection went from 1 to 155, and then it just abruptly ended. And the 155 is super valuable, and you can go look it up if you have a chance, because there was such a short print run. It's kind of like the reverse of the first printing of Ninja Turtles, in that there just are not a lot of them. And because there aren't a lot of them, especially graded, despite being produced in like 1997, it's worth like a lot of money for a comic book that was $1.50 at printing. And so and the same thing with number 21. The first printing of it is the silent issue, where there's not a word of text in the whole comic. And the story unfolds with Snake Eyes infiltrating a Cobra base and rescuing a bunch of folks and fighting ninjas, and nobody like utters a word. It's really a beautiful comic book. And that sent me down that collecting rabbit hole.
That was the first appearance of Snake Eyes, right? In that comic?
I think it's the first appearance of Storm Shadow.
Storm Shadow, that's right. Yeah, Storm Shadow. Yeah. Those are the only two. I know the first issue and that issue. My G.I. Joe knowledge is very limited. But like I said, my brother-in-law. Yeah.
Who's the publisher for G.I. Joe for the comics?
So it was Marvel at the time.
It was Marvel? Oh, cool. So we might see these
awesome.
on VEVE at some point then.
Yeah, Larry Hanna actually signed the sign back here too.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome.
He's done a lot of great comics. And the thing about this like really small community of G.I. Joe collectors was that they're very passionate, just like the VEVE collectors. So we would drive, like I went to New Orleans one time. We drove to Kansas City from New York. Like that was a long trip, and we drove there. And that one was probably the most special because I met another veteran, and his name's Wayne, and he worked for Hasbro. And because like there wasn't a ton to do at the hotel, like the whole Hasbro staff that worked on G.I. Joe, which also happened to work on like Nerf and Transformers and Wizards of the Coast stuff, they're all just sitting there boozing it up. And so I was wearing a Stetson at the time and I wasn't drinking, and he recognized my military attire and we hit it off, and we're still friends to this day. And he's introduced me to so many of his colleagues that are the people that were making G.I. Joe, like, and they were making the comic book and they were making the action figures. And so that's, you know, there's an artist in VEVE right now. His name is Logan Lubera, and he was a guy that I met at a G.I. Joe convention in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And he was also a vet. He was in the Canadian Special Forces. Super nice guy, ridiculously talented artist. And so it's like all these really interesting things about how everything kind of weaves together. Like I met him through Wayne, and Wayne and I were vets together, and Wayne was in the first Gulf War and was a great designer, and then met another vet, and then it comes back all these years later where he's dropping stuff on VEVE. And yeah, it's been really fun to just see, like, digging out these comics again. I mean, there's a big box here.
And just so for everyone out there, he was the artist, the exclusive VEVE cover for Avengers 57, the first appearance of Vision on VEVE.
Oh, nice.
Just everyone knows that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Such a cool cover.
And he also just dropped the Trial of Magneto. He did the special covers there.
I did that one too. Yeah.
Very cool to see him come back.
Oh, sweet.
It's so cool. We actually haven't had a chance to really engage about you as a collector. So like, this has been a really cool.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. I see in your background right there, a big Captain America fan too.
Huge. I mean, I think my soldiers facetiously called me Captain America, but like that's
that's
kind
awesome.
of my value set of like my favorite cover or my favorite panel was about plant yourself like a tree next to the river of truth and say, no, you move, like that. When that was read by, I think it was like Sharon Carter in the Civil War movie, the reference to the original comic was just like, that's something that like I'm passionate about as a citizen of the United States. I'm very anti-fascist, and I'm very much a supporter of, liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And so seeing like how comics, like as I was raised with comics, the X-Men being an allegory for diversity, inclusion, and all of these like really hard things about race and about gender norm things and about like, what does it mean to be a citizen? Like the comics have been tackling this stuff for years. Like Stan Lee built his reputation at Marvel by tackling really hard problems, and was, it was rather salacious at the time to create characters that were not, prototypical of the time.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, it's been really fun seeing Captain America in the MCU, especially. I mean, like Chris Evans crushed it. He crushed it. Seeing something like that, I mean, that he embodies that leadership, that wholesome leadership that everyone should really just aspire to. He's such a good guy, and especially on and off the screen too. It's been a lot of fun seeing him.
I mean,
and how he is. Yeah.
I had a professor at West Point who told me, like, if you had to pick between a general that you sort of knew or Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard, who would you pick? And his debate was like, the actor Jean-Luc Picard was like the embodiment of what you wanted to see in a leader. And so like, when you go to look for your heroes, it's hard to look for people that exist in real life because they're generally fairly flawed. But if you go to these iconic creations in pop culture, it's amazing. My favorite Captain America story is when he goes to outer space and leads, I guess it was the Annihilation Saga, where you just like, you really understand how amazing Captain America is as a leader, because he's like the intergalactic commander of forces. And they win, right? They like win against, was it the Horde, or it was one of the like Annihilation Saga ones. And that's like, right up there with him picking up the hammer of Thor. And you just see like, he's just a really good dude. Like all those things are like the embodiment of how great Captain America is.
That's such a good point about picking up the hammer. I mean, I think maybe Vision is the only other one that could actually pick it up. But I mean, he also had the Infinity Stone.
Yeah, and
So-
when that happened in the movies of the MCU, it's like, yes, we finally got the snippet that we saw.
Yep.
That he can actually do it. And then the speculation was like, well, he actually could pick it up, but he didn't want to show up Thor.
And to see Thor get excited about it too. He's like, I knew it. He's like so excited about it.
Yeah.
I think that was the coolest part. Aside
Yeah.
from him actually picking it up, seeing Thor actually genuinely excited for his friend to have have that, that honor. So that's really
The comics behind me that are Captain America, they say like fight terror, honor them. And they were the series that when the comic book for Captain America was rebooted after 9/11, these were the covers that were like, I guess you could call them propaganda, but that sounds like negative. They were very much like an embodiment of the spirit at the time. And like, I grew up in New York. Like I grew up on Long Island. Like the 9/11 impacted my family deeply. And then like I went off to war. And so these covers like that are shown all around me, they're like, I collected those, and those were like really important for me to like look at them. And the stories in them are about being a good citizen. Like that's the other part that's really amazing. And then the one that's like the vintage comic was a gift when I like left for California from New York from one of my dear friends. And so yeah, like them hanging and there's Captain America stuff everywhere. Here's one of like 3 copies of Captain America 25 that I have.
Nice.
And so that's one of my faves. I probably bought that too high, but I was like, this is, an iconic
long-term vision.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have one for each of my kids is effectively how it goes.
Nice.
That's so cool. Have you
Go ahead.
picking up much of the comics on VEVE, on the digital side?
I have. I mean, I'm trying to bootstrap a business here, so a lot of my gems go towards kind of if I can luck into it. I'm really excited about how they've changed it. This past week, it was like a totally wonderful experience.
Actually, been able to get drops.
Because I am not a bot, and that it didn't it didn't disappear instantaneously. So I got a common Inhumans, and I think that the community for VEVE and like what it represents and the potential of it, like my favorite VEVE collectible is a ultra rare Deadpool holiday statue.
Love that one.
And I have to say, like, I've created like little 3-panel comics with it, and I've done I will never get rid of that. Like that one I got it on a morning, like by luck. And I was like, holy cow, this is like really great. And it's ballooned and deflated and gone all over the place. But because it's like holiday that I love so much, and it's so funny to just like insert the most irreverent character with your friends. It's so great. And he like blows kisses, and like there's so many things about it where you can catch and have so much fun with the augmented reality. Like that, putting my kids in those pictures and like posing him with cops on the street. Like I've done all sorts of stuff with that collectible. And I think it's the very edge of the surface of what is going to happen with VEVE. Like when 2Cents is wildly successful, I'm going to circle back and get all of the recommendations that you guys have put forward, because I think that that's exactly the thing that you want. Marvel Comics #1, that is a super rare comic, and you have a chance to like, because of the nature of crypto, like own it. And that part of it in terms of like fandom and collecting and that ownership piece is the game changer for what crypto means for our community. I love listening to the updates that you give out. I've hunted down a bunch of stuff based off of your recommendation, especially the Nickelodeon stuff.
Oh yeah, the Nickelodeon Funkos are those are some good stuff. Yeah.
And I think that it is a game changer. And I feel that the folks that kind of like hopefully find your podcast and then understand that there's a breadth of collecting here where it doesn't take a ton of money to get started. there's something that you actually own, that thing you can drop all over the place and have fun with, and it won't degrade, and you can meet other folks who are just as excited about it. Like there's probably, I'm very thankful that we met, and I'm really excited that we have just so many things to look forward to.
Absolutely.
I think if they were able to just produce like a starting at #1 comic of a new character and it was only on the blockchain, that would be amazing. And I would just be there every week reading it. Cause this is the other part for Sean. My kids and I crush manga and Marvel Unlimited and Comixology. Nice. We have accounts in all of that, and we read a lot of comics. And so
awesome.
Everything coming out every week on like One Punch Man. Well, he hasn't been every week.
It's a great show.
But the comic's sick.
All
of that is a really fantastic way that both DC and Marvel are trying to like get their bearings on how to bridge this. And you'll see it. I don't know. They've never said anything, but it wouldn't shock me if there was like a well-produced year-long run that then is just dropped every Wednesday on VEVE as a comic book, and the only place you can get it is online. And
I would love to see that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I mean, we're seeing it now with the covers, and I definitely think that it's definitely very more likely than not we'll see exclusive comics for sure as time goes on. I think
I'd be surprised if Marvel wasn't working on something right now for that.
Yeah,
right.
Be very surprised.
I totally agree. That's so cool. What a fun opportunity that'll be. Are there any comics specifically you're excited about that are going to drop that you could potentially own one day? Anything specifically?
Look, the Grail comics that you guys have put forward are ones that I like will get at some point, and I'll get them at the right way. I also love golden moments, but I don't have any, and I feel like there's some real opportunity there because I think those are really interesting. Again, like all the fun that I've had with Deadpool, like being able to do that with a bunch of other statues, I think is right up my wheelhouse as well. I would probably try and go after a Jim Lee Batman at some point because I went and saw The Batman this past weekend, and I'm like, all right, that character is not going anywhere, and they did another great job with that movie. So I'm excited for it. I'm going to turn the table back on you guys a little bit in terms of how you're building this community. Like, what would you like to see happen from the collecting side, but also from the community side, and like what's in your plans for the audience? Because I don't think you guys get to talk about it, and you're really great on social and on this podcast, but like what's some teasers that you guys are working on that we should be excited about as fans of comics and crypto?
Where do we start, guys?
a lot of stuff in the works.
We got a lot of stuff in the works.
We're actually in the process of revising the slabs, the NFT comic slabs. I think we may have prematurely released those, and it's a system that we've been talking about for a while. But when people saw it visually, it was a bit different of experience, I think. But we've got so much great feedback from the community, and I'm very excited to show everybody the next round, which is coming up very soon.
Awesome.
I spoke to Brendan Cherry about it today. Big shout out to Cherry Charts. He's been an amazing collaborator on this, and I mean, he single-handedly has built a lot of the system. It's incredible. He's done a wonderful job, him and his team. So big shout out to them.
Absolutely.
I tuned in for the spaces that you guys had, and I hadn't realized how visceral of a response that folks had to that product dropping. And I just want to give you guys like a ton of props and credit. Like, you handled it in a mature and like really empathetic fashion. You've done your homework now, and you're going back. Like, look, it'd be one thing when it devolved into a screaming match, and I think some people tried to drag it that way, and you were really great about listening to the audience, because we're all trying to just like figure this out and have fun doing it. And if it loses that, then like, what's the point? and I really just wanted to give you guys props in this podcast, because I think it speaks to your character, and it's been really great working with you, and that, like, hearing how painful it was for certain people and how upset they were, and just how you really handled it well. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm confident that you're going to get to the place that you need to, because it is fun. Like, it should be fun.
Thanks so much, Mikey.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Mikey.
that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Spencer.
No, I was gonna say something else we have in the works. We'll have our website launching pretty soon, which is going to have a merch store. So people look out.
Yep.
You can get some Comics and Crypto hats and mugs and T-shirts and all that fun stuff. So that's something to look forward to as well. What else we got? Well, I guess we have some stuff that we can't really announce quite yet that we're working on with you guys. Which is
I'll allude to a certain thing. So one of the things you just talked about, merch. So one of the founding principles of 2Cents is that everybody probably has an opinion. The other one is that people will go through extraordinary lengths for a free t-shirt. And so part of what we've developed into the 2Cents platform is a way to reward people for participating in the podcast that they're a part of. And so when you think about it, and actually the VEVE drops really influenced our thought process on this. Like, I was getting so frustrated with bots getting these comics that it clicked in my head. I was like, hey, so we have the ability to know that somebody listened to a podcast. And then we know that they're a human because they're talking to us with their own voice. I was like, those two things are super valuable to the point where you can get a reward. And so the inception that's like, well, we give them a bunch of tasks, and then that reward could be a free t-shirt. And we know that people will do a lot just for that, but doing it for other things as well, whether that be a discount to a merch shop or potentially, a whitelist to mint an NFT. Those are things that we're working on at 2Cents in that kind of gamifying the podcast and the community. It's not something that everybody has to do, but we've just seen that, like, growth is around engaging your community. And for these communities that are around crypto, right or wrong, there's been a precedent set that, like, you should expect that part of the roadmap is a reinvestment of what you're making. And so we're excited to, like, leverage that feature that's coming out pretty soon, where you'll be able to, like, claim lots of great rewards in 2Cents on different podcasts, specifically Comics and Crypto. And the idea of getting a whitelist spot is also something that the audience should be really interested in, because we have some pretty fun stuff in the works for that. The last piece that 2Cents is working on is to token gate exclusive or bonus content. And so we've been working on a wallet integration that lets us check your wallet for said token. Maybe it's a token that Comics and Crypto produces, and that token would then get you bonus content and other perks that are outside of 2Cents, and then exclusive conversations in 2Cents. So those are things that we're all working and building and super excited about as well.
Yeah, can't wait to get this stuff out to the community.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It's really cool.
Well, so yes,
So
speaking.
sorry to talk about it.
Speaking of other podcasts, I mean, obviously Comics and Crypto is your favorite, but what other podcasts do you have on the 2Cents platform?
So the wonderful thing about podcasts are that they are distributed kind of in a decentralized way already. So you can pick up and listen to any podcast that you want in 2Cents, with the exception being the platforms that have decided to kind of limit content, like Spotify. Like, we don't have Joe Rogan, and I'm kind of don't have an opinion about that. The other part is that you can add in via RSS feed any of your other podcasts that allow for you to listen. What we're working on, though, is we're working on one pretty soon with the Wondery team. There's a show called Operator, which we highlight right now in the app, but we're working on a way to resurrect kind of content that might be in between seasons, or might be ones that's like was only on a limited run, but the podcast producer is interested. And so we're getting close to announce some interesting stuff around that. But we're always, for the folks that are podcasters themselves, it's true you will never reach the heights that and dear part of my heart that Comics and Crypto has, but we're onboarding new podcasts all the time. And for the listeners that are out there, if you have a podcast that you subscribe to and you use 2Cents to, and you leave them a voice message, we have a way to contact the podcaster and send that voice message to them. And so anybody, you can go to leave a comment on Comics and Crypto, which has been like really fun to hear. Part of the value that I think podcasters get from our platform is that we send you all those audio files so you can mix them into a future podcast. And that's what we're trying to produce. We're trying to make a place for podcasters to be able to connect with their community. So if you really love, I think my son listens to Potterless. He listens to it pretty consistently. And, you want to drop a voice message, the comments won't be open because we don't want to take advantage of we don't want to take advantage of podcasts that are not giving us their consent to use their platform. But you can leave them a voice message and we'll happily send along those voice messages and hopefully convert them into using the platform more. Hearing the many different accents of folks leaving you their thanks was such a joy the first couple of weeks. Yeah. And they keep flowing in. Like it's really, really awesome to hear.
Yeah, to literally hear people literally around the world like comment to our stuff is so cool.
I'm excited for you guys to keep rolling. I'm excited for hopefully a real vibrant community to spring up around 2Cents on Comics and Crypto. And I think that we're, in addition to having this crypto and physical and digital kind of coming together, I think the time is right where people like you, Sean, who really like audio comments and audio messages, and my kids use them too. I think the ability to like meet people where they're at asynchronously and leaving messages is ripe as well. We've got some really cool stuff happening on not just being able to leave it at the end, but contextually on a part of the episode is our next feature set, which we're really excited about.
Yeah. So Mikey, you were recently at South by Southwest and Podcast Movement, representing 2Cents there. And so I was just wondering if there's anything cool that you learned about the podcasting space, about, where it's going, or, has there been any talk about crypto or NFTs and how that's integrating into the space?
100%. So I'll start with South by Southwest, because South by Southwest was really an exploration of crypto. There were a lot of podcasters there, and there were a lot of great panels there, and I met up with a few folks, and it was this really interesting blend. There was a giant Doodles activation at South by Southwest, and it was like Disney World in that you walked in and you could, if you had pre-registered, your doodle was on a QR or a near field chip, and when you walked by stuff, your doodle would start popping up on things.
That's awesome. Cool.
And it was really cool. Wow. And they did it with Shopify as a merch activation. And so you would go in and you could, your doodle would be popping up and you could interact, and they had food stations. And then you could go around to the Shopify thing and they would like hand make your order and send it out to you, and you could get pins. And that was really interesting because they took over this big warehouse on a corner, and you had to like walk in through the mouth of a doodle to get in there. And it was really fun to see people really excited about that particular NFT project. There were other things that sort of like didn't work. The NFT at South by Southwest of a bat, like I tried a whole bunch of times to try and get the PFP of it, and it was just not working. So there's definitely like early days and things to work on. And there were some POAPs that you could get as well at certain select events. And for Kevin, POAP is a proof of attendance protocol.
Cool.
It is.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was
Kevin,
like,
we have our
do
own
know.
PO app. We've created a PO app before.
really? Well,
Yes, there's a Comics and Crypto episode #1 PO app
Yeah.
for
Oh, that's
our
right.
OG
I
subscribers.
remember
Yeah.
that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're still hoping to reward our users or the owners of that PO app in some way in the future.
Yeah.
I'm
Maybe
confident.
somehow with 2
Yeah.
cents. Maybe we can make
I'm
that happen.
confident you will. And yeah, so that mechanism didn't work really well. Also, there was like too much volume. So
That makes sense.
So that was interesting about like crypto was there kind of in force. There were lots of people hyping about it and talking about really interesting applications. And then when you went to the podcasting arena, like the podcasters are, especially creators, are very keenly aware that there is a new tech out there that they should be learning about and potentially leveraging. And I think the interesting piece and where we sort of got some traction was like, yeah, we've been thinking about this too, because the app ecosystem right now, in terms of like an app you get on your phone, is pretty shallow in terms of integrating with Web3 stuff. Most of the real interesting stuff happens via a browser and on the like regular web. But for podcasting, like that's, statistically like 10% of the world listens to their podcast through a browser. And so you are missing a huge audience for people that want to engage, but also want to be able to leverage this new and fun way of using, Web3. And that's like underpinning everything that we're building. We want to be able to empower creators like you to not only have like a subscription, which is very transactional, but really build a culture and a community around a Web3 presence that leverages that token and leverages that technology to really, in some instances, it's like front loading the value of your project to then build a roadmap out and have the gifts that come back to the community kind of preordained, and you get a tranche of money, and then you can keep building momentum off of that. And that's what we're really hoping to do with a lot of podcasters, is give them the opportunity to create their own NFTs and then gate exclusive content. It was probably more like bonus content, because subscriptions sort of don't work in podcasting. But we won't go there. Then we went to Podcast Movement, and Podcast Movement was a bunch of creators as well. And the creator economy is really fascinating, right? Like I kind of missed it because I don't do Twitch and I've just watched a bit of YouTube, but I think you guys do an amazing job of really hitting a lot of different surfaces with engaging content by doing this approach of like, you're on Twitter, you're on IG, you publish to YouTube, you publish a podcast, and that gives you this breadth to this community that lets people engage. And the real friction is that like Twitter, you can kind of engage on, but it who knows if it's a bot or not. IG is super proprietary in terms of what you can and can't get off of it. YouTube, I think, is one of those, like, it would have been amazing to be like a day one YouTuber and stick with it and gain it. It's just one of those, like, kind of now a chore. Like, you have to do it for discoverability, but you can't like bet the farm that that's how you're going to make money. And then podcasting in the same sense, like, but with like, you own it, it's yours, but the interactivity is like what we were trying to literally elevate with 2 cents. So that's, the podcasting industry is going through like a lot of consolidation, and it knows that it needs to make some big changes. And we're hopeful that we can be one of those companies that does it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, prior to 2 cents, the podcast aspect, just like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, felt very much like a black box. You kind of put it out there and then you get nothing back. But it's so cool to be able to now have that interaction through the 2 cents app now.
Thanks. I think we've got a pretty ambitious roadmap, and like, you push something out into the void and all you get back is like, you watch a number tick up 1 or 2 every, like in your case, it's like every couple of hours. But like if you're a podcaster sitting in by yourself recording passionate content and you push it out there, you want that feedback. And that's the piece that we're still trying to crack the nut on. Is I think there's got to be some sort of mid-roll reminding you that you've got to engage with 2Cents if you really want to connect. And it's got to kind of come from the podcaster. And we strongly believe that that's how we're going to grow, is by really taking an interest and helping a podcaster kind of understand their audience. But they've got to invest in saying, like, we want to hear from you, like literally. So go to 2Cents and go through the friction right now of downloading it, but you'll get rewarded by, you'll hear other people who are also interested in it.
Speaking of roadmap, what's your vision for the 2Cents app?
Well, great loaded question. So we have a bunch of opportunities. I'm going to get a little bit techie weird here. What I worked on at Meta was in ecosystem partnerships and product development. Meaning, if you think about the metaverse, let's take a hard left turn into the metaverse. The metaverse exists today in a lot of different ways, but the vision of like Ready Player One, where you can just like slap on glasses and you can be in a world and the world looks amazing and you can touch it and feel it and run in it and, you know, do all those things. There are like 3 big physics problems that limit that. The first is the ability for a chipset to live in a headset that can do that compute power. The second is a battery that can be small enough to be powerful enough to have an experience like that exist. And the third is bandwidth through the air that allows for enough of that connectivity to get the, like, it's like 16K per eye that you've got to be able to pipe into a headset, which is no small task, right? Like 5G is great. It's nowhere near that. So our initial vision for 2Cents was not necessarily just about helping creators. It was more of this larger vision for us to improve discourse in society. Like that's where my heart is at. Like if we can talk to each other and we can talk to each other without keyboards and without thumbs and without all caps, and you can hear my voice of how passionate I am, and I can also at the same time be cordial, I feel like the things that have happened in the United States and the world in the past, 7 or 8 years take on a different tone when people can talk and be verified as people. And so that underpins a lot of what we're trying to build out in the future sense of what 2Cents will be. And I think the way that you can get to those meaningful communications is not by putting divisive folks into communities, it's by building from the community out, because people that are passionate together and can disagree but also do it in a respectful way is going to improve dialogue and how we communicate. So we're very much about building feature sets for creators that help them monetize, help them engage deeply with their audience, and really provide them like a value that is easy enough to use and simple enough to use that is not a chore. So the roadmap really in the near term is improving the way that people can talk to you in a more seamless way, introducing a lot more monetization features for you to capitalize, meaning the call to action space that we give you, like making that more and better, and also incorporating this wallet so that you can, engage your community through an NFT project, and then they can leverage that that token gated experience, and then opening that up to like more surfaces than just podcasts. I think there's an opportunity for recorded Twitter Spaces to come onto the platform if they were to get edited a little bit and kind of edited for content. And then at the same time, a lot of them that are very active in the podcasting community or in the crypto community, they could get token gated as well. So you could have meaningful kind of long tail dialogue. And then it's also other surface areas. So a no-brainer would be books, like a launch of a book and starting a book club in 2Cents where the author is along for the ride to like answer questions, or you just have a private kind of space that's like just us reading a comic book and then talking about it at the end. And then I gotta actually probably plug in my computer here. But then the other broader vision is that you could overlay the physical space and hear people talk about, you know, their favorite restaurant as they walk by, or, you know, have something like a walking tour that comes up through an augmented reality experience where 2Cents is how that community is managed and how that community is kind of discussed. Because I like to be heads up. I like to have, you know, I like to be present. Looking down and thumbing away at things is not a way for that to happen. And so those are the longer term roadmaps. And then probably the biggest and most audacious idea we had is that we've been toying with making a DAO and letting the people that really are the podcasters that make 2Cents successful, like invest in it themselves. And so Kevin, a DAO is a distributed.
I know what that is. I know what a DAO is. Luckily,
Okay.
I know what that one is. I'm good on that one.
I listen to the podcast, and you self-proclaim what you don't know.
I learned what a DAO is.
I give him education. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Spencer at least helped me on DAO.
I got him on the crypto side.
But yeah, that is a thing that we've been exploring, where part of my work at Meta was around two things. So I was the lead for the employee resource group for veterans globally. And then that elevated the work that I did there enough where I was the representative on the diversity council for the product team to make decisions about community. And I think one of the fascinating parts of Facebook doing the like what they called is like the Supreme Court for ruling, and also the how they've tackled community standards going forward, is that if there were a way to do that from the start, how much different and how much better would Facebook be in terms of the clarity of what's allowed on the platform, but also just how people feel about having a voice in shaping what's allowed and what's not. And so that's a big piece of what we think about in how we're coming to market with 2Cents as well, is that like Mikey Piro does not want to be the person who makes decisions on that. I want to provide a place that is inclusive and that the community has built themselves, and that really represents and espouses the values of those communities, so that they can feel safe in talking about whatever it is they want to talk about, but is respectful and is, you know, not fostering bad behaviors. And that, you know, as part of the DAO would be something that we're looking to, you know, get feedback from creators like you. And really, I think is a very big differentiator from, you know, listening to your Apple podcast app or even Spotify, what's happened there more recently. And so that's the part that I'm excited about, but I have to like really talk to a lot more people about as we go forward on the roadmap.
Absolutely. If you need any help on that side, I'm happy to talk to you guys about that. I think it'd be so cool for you guys to create a DAO, and we would love to get involved in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're so excited for the future of 2Cents. Like it's I remember when we originally got in contact with each other, it just clicked immediately. You know,
Yeah,
so
I think it's a shout out to Jeremiah and Blake, who run that
big shout out
NFT Bay Area. Like, yeah, I would have never had my kids and I watch Quarantine in Pink. I would have never you know, there's so many great things that came from that.
So everyone out there, Quarantine in Pink was a comedy web series we created during the pandemic. Kevin and I are filmmakers.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
We made a comedy web series about living in a pink house during quarantine. It's a comedy.
It is
And
very
they
well
won an
done.
award for it as well.
Yes. I would also just put a disclaimer that like my kids are older. They're not like kids. It is probably a PG-13 at the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for
probably
mature audiences.
probably closer to R.
Yeah, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hilarious.
Thank you.
Mikey, it was so great having you on the podcast today, man. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's just so great to have you on here, man. It's been so much fun working with you, and I can't wait to see where the future holds.
Yeah,
The feeling's mutual, guys. Really love working with you.
And when Captain America
you
Comics
and the
1
whole
drops
team.
on VEVE, it's going to be a great. I'm gonna think of you immediately.
Thanks. I got a couple. I mean, Falcon. I got a couple to pick up, and I got to pick up some statues, but they're all coming. I would last parting piece. The next and most important VEVE statue for me to pick up is Zombie Captain America, because I was Zombie Captain America for Halloween last year.
Oh, that's so cool!
Nice. That's awesome.
It's on my Twitter feed somewhere. The real flex is that the producer or the showrunner for Marvel's What If followed me and liked my comment and said that it made her Halloween.
Oh, that's
wild.
awesome, dude.
That's epic.
That's so cool.
That's great.
That was my.
All right. Well,
that's
thank
my
you
flex.
again so much, Mikey, for everything, for you and the whole 2Cents team app. Everyone listening, please go to 2Cents. Please leave a comment. We listen to them. We're really excited to hear you all, and we're really excited about where this space is going.
And definitely follow us on both of us on Twitter, because we are collaborating on exclusive giveaways, and we have a couple more lined up. Very excited about those. It's been a lot of fun, and people are really excited about winning and getting involved. So definitely keep an eye out for those as well.